Hi, I hope you're watching this video with a little bit of a desire to learn how to watercolor paint. Or maybe just the tomatoes caught your attention because you have them ripening in your own kitchen right now. Everybody's gardens are beginning to put on some tomatoes. Here in Texas, we've had a lot of really cool days, so maybe the gardens aren't doing so well with tomatoes, but I watched these tomatoes, the two you see here, along with a few others that we've already eaten, ripen in my kitchen. And every day I looked at them and I just thought how beautiful they were. Now, when I started painting them, I was mainly just thinking about you. What inspiration there is in thinking that you might just pick those tomatoes up and sit down and get your watercolor paints out and paint them. And I suggest you give it a try, because this video is just about 25 minutes long, and from beginning to end all you'll watch is painting the tomatoes. There's not a lot of color mixing, there's not a lot of detail, and it's just with great pleasure that I think that I might inspire you to get your paints out and just try to paint the tomatoes that are in your kitchen. Now, when you found this video, you probably did not find a pattern to paint the tomatoes, but if you will go to my website, and that's waterbrushteacher.com, or you can get there by typing in kmcelwaine.com, and I have the spelling of that on this video on the right hand side. You can see it most of the time. It's in white letters, so it's not just real obvious all the time. But you will be able to click on that link and get a pattern for how to paint. It'll just be, I call it pattern, but it's a drawing that I give you so that you don't have to first draw this image. Now, this isn't the most beautiful painting of tomatoes you'll ever find. If you go Google tomatoes, you'll see a lot of teaching videos about how to paint tomatoes and everything, but I try to give you from beginning to end the process of what I did to paint the tomatoes. And I try to be extremely generous with knowledge and process and the information that you might need. Now, I'm a Daniel Smith ambassador of Daniel Smith Extra Fine Watercolor Paint, which means that they created a dot card for me many years ago with my palette. Now, that palette is a way that you can get started. That dot card, or even Daniel Smith's dot cards, is a way that you can get started figuring out what colors that you want to watercolor paint with. And the dot cards are a lot less money than investing in a brand of watercolor paint that you know nothing about and you don't know what those colors are going to look like when you start painting them. And so I give you just the information that you need to know to get started. You don't have to buy Daniel Smith paint to do it. You don't have to buy a Pentel water brush, which is what you see me using. You don't have to buy 100% cotton watercolor paper. You can just get started. But once you find out how much you love spending time watercolor painting, some of the reasons why you might love it is it can literally lower your blood pressure. It can literally change how you're thinking about your day. Just the enjoyment of water and color and just trying something new. Every painting is trying something new because you're painting something different than you did last time, or you're painting it a different way, or you're just playing with watercolor paint and a paintbrush. Regardless, you are trying something new every single time. And if you'll watch this video and just go to my website and get that pattern and transfer that pattern to watercolor paper, which I have a video that shows you how, and that link is pretty easy to find. And everything I do right here at my computer. Well, that's not true. Most of the paintings you'll see me paint, I paint them right here at my computer. And so there's a lot of information that I share with you on my website, and which is waterbrushteacher.com or kmcelwaine.com. This video is an introduction to me wanting you to know how to watercolor paint, and me sharing that information with you generously. So some of the things that I teach you that are real important are how to put the brush down. Put the brush down and pull that color out, and then pick your brush up. You don't go messing in your paint. You don't paint the paintbrush, use the paintbrush like you would a crayon, and you're not painting a wall. These are things I say to my students over and over again. And if you want to become one of my students, on Saturday mornings I teach a free watercolor painting class every Saturday morning, 8:45. We sign on to Zoom, and at 9 o'clock we get started painting. Sometimes I talk a little bit longer, but most of the time it's important things that everybody wants to hear. So sometimes I think my students probably just listen very politely, but it's important time in their day. So join me on Saturday mornings, and all you have to do that is go to my website, and on the front page there's a place that you can sign up to get my newsletter. And that will provide you with the link, the Zoom link for the Saturday free class. And that link is actually the same one I use for the paid classes. If you want to join me for one of the paid classes, you'll find out if you want to subscribe and be one of my students on a regular basis. So it's a win-win situation for everybody. If you'll go to my website and sign up to receive that email I send out that gives you all you need to join me in one of the watercolor classes. Now, okay, so I'd mentioned to you about how to put down that water brush or that paintbrush that you're using and lay that brush down. That means the bristles are most of the time supposed to spread out and really lay the color down that you have picked up on that paintbrush. And then sometimes you pick the brush right up, and sometimes you lay that brush down and pull the color out. Now you'll watch me doing that over and over again in this video. Then the other thing that I need to tell you is the colors you use are approximates to what I am using here. Right now on with Daniel Smith colors, I am using organic vermilion, and I'm also using permanent orange. Those are the only two colors that I've painted with so far. And every watercolor kit that you buy is going to have red, and every watercolor kit that you buy is going to have yellow. So you can make orange and you have red, so you can create these colors, because you could paint this painting right here with yellow and red, and it would do the same thing. Now then, I'm using perylene green. Now perylene green is a professional artist watercolor color. You're not going to get that, and that name is not going to show up in just any kit. This is particularly Daniel Smith's perylene green, and it is a wonderful, wonderful dark color to use. Sometimes it's the cedar trees on the side of a hill in one of my landscapes. Sometimes it's the shadow underneath the tomatoes. And so it's a very usable color, and sometimes I mix a little bit of sap green in with this color, and sap green is a color that a lot of kits have, a lot of different brands have. So it's easy to get a hold of, but it's kind of an earthy, it's a reddish green, you might say. You know, if you haven't painted a lot, you're not likely to think of a reddish green, but it's just it's an earthy green, and a lot of fun to have in your palette. I have 10 colors that I suggest that students learn from the beginning, and what those 10 colors are primary colors, secondary colors, and then I also add a burnt sienna type color and a dark blue called indigo. And no, black's not in my palette for a beginner at all. So those are all wonderful colors to start with, and I recommend that you visit my website and watch the video of me building that beginner palette with those 10 colors. And then there's 25 colors that I teach with after that. They're all Daniel Smith colors, and they're all wonderful colors to add to that basic palette that you first of all learn with. And I think at the minimum you need to paint at least 10 or 12 paintings with that beginning palette, and that's the palette that I use on Saturday mornings for you to really learn with. So so far in this painting, all you've watched me use is permanent orange. Now they're all Daniel Smith colors, so that's permanent orange, and it's vermilion red. I'm sorry, organic vermilion, and perylene green. And a little bit, I will add a little bit of sap green to the color, and it will just show up just a little bit greener. All of the perylene green will be affected by it, and it'll just show up a little bit greener. But you can see me now. I've pretty much got all the local color down, which means my tomatoes look red, and so local color begins to be what color your painting is, and red would be how most people would just describe that. Now I've used a very bright red orange, which is what organic vermilion is, and I've used a really nice yellow orange color, which is what permanent orange is. And now then I'm putting in that darker, and so you layer color. Your color underneath has to be dry to be able to layer color. And when you lay that darker color down on top, you want to be very intentional in how you put it down on top of the color you've put down. Intentional is a word that I use often when I'm painting. Now, I may not say it all the time to my students, but I think it to myself all the time. You paint very intentionally. You don't just go play in the color. Now, if you want to see there, that's the sap green showing up in there. You can see that's just a little bit more green than the perylene green is. So my whole thing is self-control and patience. Those are the two things that watercolor painting will teach you, and you'll enjoy it so much. It's not like life where patience doesn't pay off immediately. You're not aware of that characteristic being, oh my gosh, I'm such a patient person, it's so wonderful. But in watercolor painting, patience really pays off right away, because when you let that undercoat dry and be just kind of a base, a foundation to paint on, then go in with the next layer, your colors are darker. You're able to build up a richer color than you had before. And that's what I'm doing with the tomato, and that's what I'm doing with the background in this painting. This is a perfect painting to do in the beginning so that you can begin to learn, oh, it's not dry enough. Oh, it's not mixed enough. Oh, it's not, because see how that tomato looks like it's pretty solid, but it's a different color in different places. It's more orange in some places. It's more reddish orange in other places. It's brighter in some places. How do you do that? It's that layering process. I even end up putting a little bit of shadow underneath the leaves that are on the tomato, so that the tomato leaves begin to look like they're lifted up off of the tomato. And it's just a now then, something that every student wants to know how to do is how to splatter their painting. And so right there, I did a little bit of splattering. I went over and I picked up a blue that's kind of dark, and I just really put a lot of it in my brush, and I splattered it on there. And that just adds that little bit of fun to that painting. And it doesn't take much. It just doesn't take much at all. So, but in this little painting, I've shown you how to do all of those different things. I don't have any secrets as an artist. I can't wait to teach things to you. And that's what I do in my classes, is we paint lots of different items and a lot of different things that are just found all over God's green earth. And you'll just pretty much have an opportunity to learn everything that you ever wanted to know about watercolor painting. And in the end, you're going to have lots of watercolor paintings, and those can become gifts. They can become framed. But I recommend that after you do each one of the little paintings, whether you like it or not, you had the experience of painting it. And you have that memory of painting it and learning how to do that. And it's good for your memory. It's good for your growing your, I think they're called dendrites in your brain, stimulation, being a lifelong learner, all of those things that we all really want to participate with. And guess what? Once you learn how, it'll be something that you want to do with your grandchildren, and water brushes are so wonderful to paint with your grandchildren with. So I'd recommend that you have lots of prying watercolor paint, and water brushes so that you can share that time with your grandchildren after you have painted a few, so that you really have a confidence level in how things will go. So, but when you finish this painting, which I'm getting pretty close to being finished with it, right now, well, there's about 4 minutes left on the video. I recommend that you take this little painting and put it over on a bookcase or put it about eye level somewhere. Just lean it up somewhere. Maybe it's in your kitchen sink window. It doesn't really matter, but I recommend that you look at this painting that you've just done all day long. You know, maybe until you paint another painting. And just see if every time you look at that painting, just see if you don't smile. And I promise you that one of the things that we need to do more every day is just smile. So at the very least, looking at this painting is going to cause you to remember painting it. You're going to have that thought, and you're going to be glad you did. Now, I'm 71 years old, and if I didn't paint and paint things that are I'm inspired to paint and what I think that you might want to learn how to paint, I'm proud of that. And you should be too when you do your paintings. And so when you set those paintings over in some place in your house that you can just see it, just have it catch a glimpse, then it's very, very possible that that little painting can begin to really change how you see yourself and how you see your life. You have a lot of paintings to do, for one thing. And that's such a wonderful feeling to know that I can sit down and paint. And my website has lots of patterns that you can go get and paint and watch the videos as I paint them. So kmcElwaine.com or waterbrushteacher.com takes you to the very same place. And right now I'm doing just a little bit of gouache on this one because I lost the highlight of this painting. I just painted over it just a little bit too much. And so gouache is a watercolor paint that is it's not transparent, and it will stay right there on top of your watercolor, which all those are transparent colors that I've used here. So that means that you can see through them, which the perylene green that you see around on the base, that you can still see some white underneath it. It was a wash instead of the darkest color. That is the transparency of watercolor paint. And it is one of the things that makes watercolor very vibrant, is all that white. And that's why I went and got the gouache and put the highlight back on that tomato. Now I'm signing my painting, which I hope you will do, and be sure to sign that painting inside of the art. Don't go out and sign it out at the edge, where if you frame it, it'll be framed outside. And I recommend that you frame your paintings. Thank you for watching.